Hello, and welcome to the Empowered Learning Podcast. This is your host, Andy Bennetts. On today's episode, we speak with my good friend, Cris Baker. Cris is a lifelong educator, teacher, principal, coach, and more, a caring and passionate leader, and a big believer in the power of relationships and technology in helping students reach their fullest potential. Welcome, Cris. Hey, Cris, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's good to see you again.
You too.
It was not too long ago. We were booth buddies back in Colorado Springs, and just having a good old time with Heidi, and that was a fun week,
It
I
was
guess.
fun.
Right? Yeah.
No and all.
I know, right? I was gonna say from you, Las Vegas girl, that the snow was probably not your cup of tea, huh?
No, it's pretty to look at.
Right. Not to
I'll
drive
give you
in.
that.
Exactly. Exactly. So you and I have been getting to know each other over the last few months. But for all of the listeners that don't know you, and I'm sure I will learn lots of new things about you today, but tell us a little bit about yourself before we dive into kind of background and things that make you tick and things that excite you in the fields of education and leadership.
Well, I am a lifelong educator. I only ever wanted to be a teacher from the
Mm.
time I was a small child, much to my brother's chagrin, who was always my student, whether he
Yes.
wanted to be or not.
Right.
He's younger, so I could, bully him into whatever I wanted him to do. So K-12 education the whole time, 27 years of that in California, yeah, 37, 8, 6, I don't know, years in Vegas,
Mm-hmm.
so Nevada,
Mm-hmm.
and classroom teacher, assistant principal, strategist, staff developer,
Wow. The whole
adjunct
shebang, huh?
professor thrown in there for quite a
Okay.
few years.
Very
So
cool.
yeah,
Very
yeah,
cool.
run the gamut.
That's awesome. That's awesome. What age, since it sounds like you've kind of gone, did you do elementary ever?
I did elementary for about 4 years.
Okay, gotcha.
The rest of that time was middle school,
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that
never
is
high school.
a calling in and of itself, huh? But you said professor as well. So you did adult ed as well?
Yeah, just
Okay.
adjunct. I was never
Hmm.
on track for any
Gotcha.
professorship. So yeah,
Gotcha. So what age level do you what was the most fun for you?
I like the middle school kids.
Yeah,
Like I said, I'm called to do that. I
that's
guess
awesome.
I'm just a middle school weirdo at heart, like the kids are. So yeah, they crack
Yeah,
me up.
I
Keep
love
me
it.
young
That they do. They either keep you young or they drive you
or
to
make you
the
old. Well,
drink. One of the two, right? There's
or
nothing in
both.
Yeah, right. I love it. Both my sister and my brother-in-law are now at the middle school. They've been at the high school in different places, different times, but yeah, they're now middle school educators, and God love them. We need, and the students at that age level definitely need good mentors and people
Yeah.
that care. Because if you don't care, you're not going to last very long in middle school.
Yeah, they can smell fear.
Yes, and they are quite smelly themselves too. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? All right. So you said that you wanted to be a teacher from as long as you can remember. Do you remember any? I guess tell us a funny story about being a teacher to younger brother. I'm sure you've got a few.
Oh, well, I would make him be my student. So I
Mhm.
would, read to him and then give him homework and make him do it. And he really, it wasn't that grudging for him. It was, it was kind of the fun thing that we did. And then when I marched myself into college, I didn't know any better. And I said, I want to major in teaching. Well, that was California. There is no such thing as major in teaching.
Yeah.
So they laughed at me. And
Oh,
so I was lucky enough to find a good professor and counselor that, counseled me into a major that I could be a teacher
gotcha.
from. So,
Gotcha.
yeah.
That's very cool. Very cool. Um, brothers, sisters, what was your life like growing up?
One younger brother
Okay.
and Montclair, California, if anybody knows the Inland Empire in California
Okay.
out
I
there.
do not.
Born, raised, same house, never moved until I was an adult and it was time for me to go.
Wow.
So that's I right, you know what you know. And
Right.
it took me well into my adulthood to figure out that that's probably not the norm.
Right. Yep.
I
We've got
thought everybody does this, right?
right. Exactly right. We've got two high school boys, and we can tell them till we're blue in the face, but until they go out and experience for themselves, like, you know, it's not normal anymore, unfortunately, to have mom and dad and to have an extended family, and we all get along. And this is like a not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but yeah, there's a very different world out there that sometimes you just don't know until you get out there and experience it for yourself, huh?
Right.
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 That's fun. That's fun. What were some early inspirations or motivations towards education? Did you have family members that were in education, or did you have a teacher that really made an impact on your life?
I did. I had a teacher. I had the same teacher for third grade, fourth grade, and sixth grade at my
Oh wow.
elementary school.
Okay,
So
cool.
there was a group of us that I'm actually still in contact with
Oh, that's
many of the
fun.
people. I mean, we're not close friends, but contact with. And so as we moved grades, she moved grades.
Hmm.
And except for that fifth grade year. And so I thought that was great. And we just
Hmm.
always got along. And um it just kind of solidified what I wanted to do.
That's awesome.
And just, we were, I'd say back in the day, but teachers do it today too. We
Mhm.
went out to dinner with her and
Oh
she took
wow.
us to the restaurant and taught us how to be taught the manners, like the
Right.
place setting, and you pass
Hmm.
things to the right when you're at a fancy restaurant. And
Right.
God, now that was a good 50 years ago, and it's still in my head.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it
That's awesome.
was fun.
What an impact she had.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Do you have you had the opportunity to kind of as an adult, touch base with this teacher and kind of let her know the impact that she had on your life?
To some extent, she
Yeah.
has passed since,
Okay.
I was in her classroom, but she would always sit on the desk and read to us because,
Hmm.
teachers were allowed to just sit and read to kids for a few years there. And
Yeah.
we would always say that we weren't allowed to sit on our desk.
No,
Obviously,
of
kids
course
aren't
not.
allowed to sit on the desk. And we would always say, that's not fair. How come you
Oh,
get to
right.
sit on the desk? And she said, I'll tell you what, when you get your teaching credential, you can come in here and sit on my desk.
Okay.
And when I got my teaching credential, I went right into her classroom and I told her kids this story and
Mhm.
I sat right in the middle of her desk.
That's
And
awesome.
that was really fun. And then I was invited and attended her retirement party
Very cool.
a few years back. So
Very
yeah, it
cool.
was good.
That's cool. Yeah, I asked just because as a former teacher, um, there's really nothing like having a former student come back and just say, hey, Mr. Bennett, you really made an impact in my life, or I loved your class, or whatever the case is, right? Every teacher has their own story like that, but that's kind of what keeps you going, because there's a lot of times where there's some dry seasons, shall we say, where there's not a lot of encouragement and not a lot of pay. So to get those little attaboys, it makes a big difference.
Yeah, it's what we live for,
It
basically.
is. It is. It is. Love it. I love it. So you've lived in the teacher space and the administrator space. Tell me about that transition. At what point did you know that you wanted to go to the dark side from the teacher side, and right, depending on where you're at?
I call it the dark side too.
Yeah.
That's funny because I was going along teaching and I applied to be a mentor teacher.
Hmm.
And I thought, oh, I could help other teachers teach. That would be great. And then there was an opportunity to leave the classroom and become a full-time mentor teacher. And I thought, oh, this is great because at that point it really was ridiculous. I was out this day and out that day, and
Hmm. Okay.
I was gone so much it didn't make any sense.
Right.
So I went to the staff development office, was a full-time mentor staff developer, and I was also that's when I was doing adjunct at one of the universities, and
Okay.
the person in charge of the program said, "Hey, we have this administrative program. Would you like to get your administrative credential?" I'm like, "Sure, why not?"
Right. Okay.
And so I kind of happened into that. I didn't, it
Mhm.
wasn't really on my radar that I wanted to go into administration.
Gotcha.
So I did that and then, went up that ladder and I mean, I did it for 8 years. Did assistant principal and the principal for 2 years. And it was fine. Assistant principal I liked better than principal, but it was
Right.
more far removed from the kids.
Right. Right.
So I decided I didn't really like it as much as I thought, and I couldn't affect as much change as I thought I could either.
Sure. Right.
I was still a little Pollyanna,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Yep. I love it. Well, and that's, I mean, like you said, everybody has a different path in getting into administration, whether it's a driven thing of like, hey, I know from day one, this is what I want to do. There's some that try to, shortcut the process, for lack of a better term, that maybe don't have a lot of teaching experience. And then it shows, right? It's like, y'all are telling us to do stuff that if you had spent any day in a classroom, you would know that's not how things work, right? But then there's the ones that their teacher heart is always there and ever present. But I've had many experiences like that, and know a lot of people that their yearning is for the classroom. They miss the kids. They miss that that's why you get into education, is to make a difference
Right.
in kids' lives. So yeah, I can
Yeah.
relate to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fun. Let's see here. So you said that you had done like 8 years, I think, in administration.
Hmm.
After administration, what came next after you got out of did you go back into the classroom, and did you dive into how you and I know, or how did that go?
I did go back to the classroom
Okay.
for a little while, and that was like I loved it. I thought it was the best part of my career because I
Mm,
felt like I finally finally knew what I was doing and
right.
could do. And it was a little difficult, right, to explain that. Do you want to go back to the classroom?
Right.
So, but it was good. And then moved to California. Sorry, moved from California, retired from
Okay.
there, and then retired from Nevada, and then came into this account manager position with ClearTouch that I'm in now, which is how we connected. So
Right.
this is officially my second retirement gig.
There you go. Everybody needs at least one or two, right? So
Yeah.
I love it. So obviously, ClearTouch, for those that don't know, is an interactive flat panel company. We'll put links in the bio afterwards. But so was technology a big part of your education experience, both as a teacher and as administrator? Do you liken yourself as a techie? Like, tell me about your experience with education and technology.
Um, I do not liken myself as a techie,
Okay,
although I'm not scared of it.
got it, got it.
So, I think I'm kind of middle of the road. I really do. I would always say there's got to be an easier way to do this.
Right,
And that's when the technology comes in for
sure,
me, right?
sure.
So I like that aspect of it. And when I had my resume out and about and it was picked up, initially I was talking with the people there at ClearTouch and I thought, oh, I was 20 minutes into the conversation. In my head, I'm thinking, oh, you want me for your professional development team. That makes
Mm-hmm.
perfect sense. I was a
Right,
teacher.
right.
And no, I had it all wrong.
Oh, okay.
They wanted me for the account management side, which is great. Um, but yeah, it was a steep learning curve for the
hmm
technology, but I also think if we fight technology in schools, it's a losing battle.
Right,
I mean, it just is. We have to move along or get left behind.
right, right. I always say leverage, don't limit, because if you
Yeah,
start trying to limit technology, it's going to just bowl you over.
right.
Um,
And there, let them become teachable moments. How do you use
right,
it safely? How do you use
right.
it effectively? Let it make your life, like I said, let it make your life easier. Let it
hmm
help you.
Right.
Don't fight it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I completely agree. So being that you had, lots of experience in classroom, and now you're kind of on the other side supporting teachers and folks that are getting solutions into schools. It's, I guess, I'll go to that in a little bit. Let me kind of backtrack just a little bit, because we have some similarities in our paths, right? We were teachers and administrators, and then we went into semi-sales, but we're still in education, but it's not really in the classroom, right? Um, I guess, how did you reconcile that? I mean, that took my educator's heart a long time to say, yes, I'm still making an impact on education, but it's not a direct one. And I went through some withdrawals of not having that personal connection with folks. I've adapted and switched things around a little bit, but and I guess you're somewhat new into this process. But what would you say is your how are you reconciling still having a teacher's heart, but doing it from a different angle? Not one is good or bad; it's just different angle.
Well, I think for me, since in my head, I knew I was retiring from
Mm-hmm.
teaching.
Okay,
It 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 wasn't a huge Band-Aid ripoff kind
got
of a
it.
thing.
Yep.
And the last 3 years, I had been a strategist, so I didn't have my own
Okay,
classroom.
got it.
I kind of knew a lot of the kids, so I mean, I do miss the camaraderie of the staff.
Sure.
And I do miss the kids and I do miss, like right now we're in the holidays and it's like, oh, I didn't get to hear the band do their
Mm-hmm.
Christmas show or their holiday show and I
Right.
didn't get to see, the theater production and
Mm-hmm.
all of those things. So it's just giving time and space, but then still knowing it's like I
Right.
do get to go into the schools. I do get to
Sure.
see the kids and it's the grandma thing. I hype them all up with this big technology and then I get to leave and, let everybody else
I
deal
love
with the fallout.
it. I love it. Oh, that's fun. So given your experience in education and now in the technology space, what are some trends, some developments that you think are, interesting, noteworthy, whether that's AI or just, in general, technology things? What strikes your fancy? What do you think? Where do you think technology, or I'm sorry, education is going with that?
Well, you said it, AI. That's
Okay.
that's the thing now. I think that if we ignore, we'll be sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So, use it to your advantage. I
Mm-hmm.
still, a lot of my friends are still teachers. So,
Mm-hmm.
we got on the chat GPT and said,
Mm-hmm.
look, I'll help you build a lesson for your
Right.
kids. Use it. Don't, especially still with my middle school brain, if you say you can't do this, you're not allowed.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing they're going to do.
Right. Yeah.
So,
True.
incorporating that in there. So I'm thinking AI is one of the main pieces, and then
Mm-hmm.
I'm just wondering, about we all kind of, I don't know, can I say we all kind of hated remote learning? I don't know.
I
It
think
was
that's
a
a pretty
grand experiment to
yes.
say the least.
Yes, for sure.
Uh, but I wonder if we could do it differently or better, and maybe I don't know. I
Yeah.
think we kind of missed the boat there in
Right.
kind of changing the way education could be, should be, would be.
Sure. Yeah.
And I don't pretend to know what that would look like.
Right.
Um, I just think there's more to be kind of discovered or
I
unearthed.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's one of those things is that, because of the situation that we found ourselves in with COVID, there was no choice, right? We had no say in the matter. We went remote, whether you liked it or not, whether you hated it or not, whether you were set up for it, with Wi-Fi devices, all of the complexities we had, and for those poor kiddos that maybe didn't have a parent at home to help guide them through this process. I mean, there was
Manage.
a million things that were complicating factors for that. But I tend to agree with you. I think coming out of that, because we were in such a rush to get back to the way it was, I think we might have missed. There are some benefits to having that, right? And even if we adopt a hybrid model where it's not all or nothing, I think education is terrible about this whole pendulum swing, right? I mean, is it whole language? Is it phonics? It's
Right.
probably something in between, right? And I think
Sure.
this idea of is it virtual learning? Is it in person? It's probably something in between that's going to be the most impact and the best, for students as a whole, right?
Right. And everyone is different and
Mm-hmm.
it can, I don't know, could it be okay to be different for everyone? I mean,
Right.
I don't know, on a large scale, like on my principal brain kicks in and
Sure.
goes, oh my God, I got 30 kids doing that and 300 kids
Right.
doing that. And that sounds like a nightmare.
Right.
Um, Still think it needs some exploring.
Yeah, I agree. I do agree. I think that there's definitely more to be discovered there. And hopefully, education in the future we'll go that route, and we will bang on our drum as much as we
Right.
can, right? um, so you have obviously worked with lots of different people, teachers, fellow educators. Now you're in with Clear Touch, and you're working with resellers and different things like that. What kind of people do you most enjoy or love working with? What are the traits of people that you just love working with?
Oh, I love people who are transparent, for lack of a better, I kind of
Okay.
hate that word, but right,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to be second guessing the
Mm-hmm.
people
Okay.
that I hang out with, right?
Right. Right.
And I like people with a sense of humor. My sense of
Mm-hmm.
humor is kind of dry, and so I have to remember that people, when I first meet people, that they don't really know me, and so I
Mm-hmm.
kind of have to be careful about what comes out of my mouth sometimes.
Love
I'm like, no, 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 that's a joke, that's a joke.
No, you're good.
Um, so just I like sense of humor. I like people that are easy to talk to talk
Mm-hmm.
with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, just being able to go, like my learning curve is I don't have to like apologize all the time
Mm-hmm.
or explain myself away. It's like,
Right.
this is what's happening. Here's what we're doing,
Right.
and more straightforward. I like that.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I agree. Very good. Um, So, lots of different routes we could go here. I'm looking off my sheet here of different things that we could, different directions we could go. We'll go from a kind of a fun question to a little bit deeper question.
Okay.
What would you say is the most important piece of advice that you would give your 18-year-old self? Sounds like doesn't sound like you're living with a lot of regrets. You've had a very nice career and, gone where you wanted to go. But if you could transport yourself back and talk to 18-year-old Cris Baker, what would you tell her?
That it is okay to slow down and make mistakes along the way.
Mm,
I tend, even now, it's getting less and less, but I tend to be very hard on myself because I
mhm.
think that I should know everything out of the gate
Right.
all the time.
Yep.
And so that caused me some distress as a young
Mhm.
adult.
Right. Yep. Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. I'm not a big reader. I'm a huge advocate of learning. I listen to a lot of books. It's hard for me to just sit and read a book, but a book that I have read twice through now. It's called The Bug in Your Brain. And actually the writer of that was a personal coach of mine for a while last year. Talks a lot about the importance of self-worth and what is the voice? What are you telling your internal self over and over and over again? And even having gone through that book, listened to that book, having him as a personal coach, I still find myself just racking myself, beating myself up over every, lost thing of like, hey, I didn't do that, shouldn't do that. Um, it's difficult. But I think it's a sickness we all need to kind of work through and kind of give ourselves a little bit of grace.
Right. Well, we are our own worst critic, right? So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yep. Yep. I agree. All right, Cris. Well, it's crazy how fast time flies here, but
Holy
I
cow.
mentioned before, I know, right? That we were going to do a grab bag question. So the rest of these, you kind of had an idea, but this one, you never know. So here we're going to go. We're
Okay.
gonna do our little spinny wheel here and figure out which grab bag question you're going to get. Ooh, question 20. All right, give me a second here.
Okay, I don't have
Question
them listed here,
20
so
is, all right. If you had to write a book tomorrow, what would you write about? What would you write about if you had to write a book tomorrow?
it's funny. I threaten to write a book all the time.
Oh yeah.
And don't ask me if I've even started. So, um, but it actually wouldn't have anything to do with education or technology.
Okay.
Sorry for your
No, it's all
your
good.
podcast themes,
You're
but
good.
I would write it about um, the power and need of like friendships through your life.
Wow. All right. Tell me more. That's worth diving into a little bit more.
Well, I am lucky enough to have a group. There's a group of five of us friends, um, who grew up together. We're still
Mhm.
in constant contact. I consider them my good friends. We've known each other for, depending on who it is, between
Uh-huh.
45 and 50 years.
Wow, that's awesome.
And we're really good friends to the point where I know if any of us called the other one and said, I need help, we would go help.
Hmm. Hmm.
And again, going back to the beginning where um, you, you don't know things differently than what you've lived.
Hmm. Yep.
I guess that is not the norm either, that you have a group of friends, that many. I mean, there's four of them, four
Hmm.
friends to me.
Yeah.
For that long, they're that close.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's just, the ins and outs of life and marriage and divorce and
Hmm.
childbirth and
Right.
just everything. I
Hmm.
cannot imagine not having that in my life.
Yeah. Right. That's awesome. I would read that book. Like I said before, I'm not a reader, but I would read that book. That sounds brilliant. I love it. That'd be fun. I don't have it off the top of my head, but I remember a stat probably in the last few years just talking about the number of close friends and how like since 1950 that number is just declining and declining and declining. It's like you've got 2,000 friends on Facebook and Instagram or hundreds of thousands of followers, but like how many friends do you have? It's like a handful, maybe one, maybe two. Whereas before it was like you had a lot of really, not a lot. You had a small number of tight knit things like
Yes.
you were talking about, and then acquaintances after that. It wasn't like this surface level. Oh, they're a follower. Oh, they're a. You know what I'm saying? I
Right.
think we are missing that for sure.
Yeah. And
Yep.
maybe on the one hand, getting back to technology, maybe technology is to blame for that,
Yeah.
but maybe we could use it to bridge that gap, right? Because
Hmm.
how easy would it be to be in contact with someone far away?
Right. Right.
It's easier now than it was before.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
I mean, back to that idea of limiting, don't leverage. I mean, social media is not going to go away, whether we like it, or would want it to or not. But how can we use that for good rather than tearing people down or comparing or whatever, all the other terrible things that come out of that? Yeah.
sure.
Awesome. All right. So 3 key questions. You ready? I need to have like a drum roll sound or something like that. But in the meantime, we'll just go with it. All right. So, Chris, who is the leader that you most admire and try to emulate?
Well, it's a leader from my educational experience. It's not
Okay.
a famous person.
Oh, it's all good. Yeah.
Um, uh, but his name was Mike Weiland, and he was a teacher with me when I first started teaching, and then he became a principal and a something or other in the district office.
Okay.
But he just always he helped me so much, and he was always for the kids. He was again a lifelong learner. He was always encouraging me, oh, you need to go get your master's degree, here's this program, and here, I'll help you. And I would have an idea, and we would work together, and he would make this beautiful notebook. And I said, wow, that's what I thought of. And he's like, yeah,
Mhm.
that's all you, right? So I'm learning, like, good leaders don't take all the credit, right? They give
Wow.
credit when it's
Yeah.
due. And even if it was his idea or anyone else's idea, it didn't matter, right? And as long as things were happening and you
Right.
were positive, and
I love it.
yeah, it was
That's
good.
did I spell his name right? Wyland, W-Y.
Weilein, like EIEIO. That's what he always used to say.
Ilein.
Yeah.
Something like that. Wyland.
And no D on the end. No D.
Wyland. Got it.
There you go.
Cool. All right. Awesome. All right. Question number 2 here while I erase this. All right. What learning has most impacted you in the last year? Could be a conference, a book, a person, a chance encounter. What would you say is the most
Chance encounter.
impactful learning in the last year?
Well, actually it is a book, and
Okay.
it's called To Sell is Human.
Okay. I think I've
And
heard
it
it
was
before.
recommended to me by a friend of mine, and she's like, no, it's not like really. used car salesman tips and
Right.
tricks, right? It's just like as humans, when we interact, we're we're selling.
Mm-hmm.
And it helped me take away that um kind of stigma and idea
Mm-hmm.
that I had of, oh, you're a salesperson. And it's the used car salesman persona that people that
Yep.
I don't know, I almost always thought of.
Yeah.
And it really it and it's there are those people. I mean, it
Sure.
that, comes from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
It's not made up, but just like all interactions, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
and if you look at selling as I'm not trying to sell you, I'm really trying to help you.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Yep.
I am trying to help you.
Yep. And
Eh,
I think that's probably one of the many reasons that you and I hit it off. I mean, that is definitely my approach. And that was, I mean, we talked about before, when you left the classroom, you kind of felt that aching or that longing to be with kiddos. This was a huge jump for me. I mean, that took years to own and just be okay with saying, I am an education salesman, a consultant. Consultant helps to kind of soften a little bit, but
right.
um, it really is. And I had the exact same experience and expectation, I guess, of it being kind of a pushy thing and just a disingenuous or whatever the case is. And if you're doing it right, it's not that at all. If you're doing it right, it's
Right.
not that at all. Right. Yep.
Right. And I can make a lot of friends even if,
Mhm.
this person or that district doesn't decide to
Right.
use my product. That
Sure.
doesn't mean I don't like them anymore.
Right. Yep. Yep.
I
Exactly
mean, when I say it out loud, it sounds silly. It's like, well, of course not.
right. I know. Right. Yeah. But yeah, you have those. And again, back to that inner voice kind of just beating yourself up. It's like, oh, oh, now they don't like me. It's like, that's not the case. But yeah, no, I got you. I got you. All right. Last question here. Um, like the name of the podcast, how would you empower learning for future generations?
Well, Um, I would, and again, I grew up in the 70s and we had, pods and all, we didn't have bells that rang at school. Jimmy
Mm-hmm.
Buffett, Margaritaville played when it was time to move from class to class. Okay, it was
Uh,
California, but
yeah,
anyway,
that's funny.
but from that, I think just really empower the students, give it
Mm-hmm.
over to them.
Right. I love
What
it.
do you look, what do you want to learn? You have to, and I'm not talking like a 4-year-old, but maybe the
Mm-hmm.
Montessori kind of,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
you know, discovery. But then when students are older, because again, my middle school brain's kicking in, what do you want to learn?
Right.
You
Right.
tell me what you want to learn now. Y- And it was, well, how could you just break everything,
Mm-hmm.
let them decide what they want to learn. And this is a really unpopular opinion, but I would get rid of grades. I think grades are silly.
Yeah.
But again, I think that's my 70s hippie brain coming through. But
Yeah.
yeah, I was having this conversation with the counselor and she goes, well, what about like in high school and they have the valedictorian or but now it's 5.1 GPA or
Right.
5.0
Right.
or 4. I go, I don't know. Do you want me to clap harder for someone when they walk across the stage?
No, I get it. It's a little ridiculous after a while.
Yeah, I would just
Yeah.
let kids just not decide because I don't want to say, oh, you have to decide your career path
Mhm.
when you're 11. That's not
Right.
what I'm
Right.
talking about.
Yeah.
Just
Direct.
kind of
Mhm.
take the, really the Montessori approach and let them do what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Let them
Yeah.
be in charge.
Right. Love it. I love it. Very cool. All right. Well, Cris, as we kind of wrap up here, we've talked about lots of different things. Is there anything that I maybe forgot to ask that you'd like to share with folks?
I don't think so. Just,
Okay.
I'm glad to have the opportunity. This is the first time for me being on podcast, so
I
that's
love it.
exciting, and
You did
I'm
great.
I'm really glad you're doing this. It's really
Appreciate that.
cool. I'm excited to see the finished product.
Absolutely. And that is coming. So thank you very much. And for those that want to connect with Cris, we'll put contact information in the show notes, and we'll go from there. So thank you again, Cris. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure you and I will talk soon. And for listeners, we'll catch you next time. Thanks.
Thank you. Have a good
Bye.
day.